to Edinburgh! We are in 67B2 Dundas Street. I'm Rebecca Farnum, this is Ramblings with Becca, and today we're going to talk about virtual hydro-hegemony. After I share the fact that I went to Hogwarts today, aka Enoch Castle, which is actually in England, and B, it's my parents' anniversary. Happy anniversary, Kendall and Charlie. Woo woo! Okay, so yeah, happy personal excitable things. Excitable? Whatever. Check out Facebook and the blog, callmebex.blogspot.com. For those things, we're going to move on to virtual hydro-hegemony. So in the last few sessions, we talked about power and hegemony and then got into hydro-hegemony, originally introduced by Zaytoun and Warner, and then it revised and tweaked a little bit by Cascow and Zaytoun a few years later, that really looks at state control over shared river basin and water resources. Which states get how much water, why, how that happens, and then hopefully leading to how can we tweak that if there's gross inequities. For my dissertation this year, I expanded this framework, not so much revision as expansion, to carry it into other kinds of water resources and other places. So their framework of hydro-hegemony really only looks at shared river basins. I was interested in looking at other kinds of water resources and endowments. Most specifically, virtual water, which quite a while ago, if you may remember, looks at the water that's embedded in goods, particularly in trade. So there's a lot of water in the food we eat, in the goods that we use, in this sweater, etc., that goes into the raw materials that are made. So irrigation and water used in agriculture is a big part of virtual water, but then also processing and blah 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 blah. Okay, so very brief overview of virtual water there. Virtual hydro-hegemony then looks at the power involved in trade resources, trade relations between states that encompass virtual water flow. So when the United States sends cereals and grains to Egypt, they're not just sending cereals and grains, they are in some ways sending the water. What does that trade relationship look like? What does the water trade relationship look like? And what kinds of hegemony are going on there and in all other trades around the world? So I took Cascow and Zaytoun's revised framework of hydro-hegemony and made a framework of virtual hydro-hegemony. Similar to Cascow's and Zaytoun's, it incorporates or encompasses, like how I just kind of blew those, it incorporates 4 pillars. 1, the local endowment. I very carefully didn't want to use the term natural endowment because we don't like that whole nature versus society dichotomy. Yeah, but local endowment, what a state has within its borders available to it. This is things like rainfall and water resources within the borders, and then also evapotranspiration rate. So if you're in a really, really hot, dry desert, you have to give more water to a plant than if you're in a really cool place where not as much water is getting sucked up by the sun. So things like that influence how much water has to go into a product and how much water you have to put into a product. That's your local endowment. Second pillar, material power. What kind of oomph you've got militarily matters a bit in trade relationships, simply because, if a country can completely crush another one, that influences, how things are seen. Especially, though, related to trade relations would be economic strength, GDP, that kind of thing, how rich is the country. And then also infrastructure and technical capacity. So how much you can do with the water you have. Israel has very little water, but it really knows what it's doing with it. So its low local endowment is kind of made up for by its big prowess at the tech piece. Third pillar, bargaining power. Obviously very relevant to trade relations. What can you do at the table? How much power do you have to influence the agenda? When the US president calls, countries are going to pick up the phone. When the Zimbabwean president calls, maybe not so much. There's different weights to different players on the global scene. So that matters. And then fourth pillar, ideational power, power to shape discourses, normative assumptions. So talking about and defining what virtual water is and that it's helpful. That's a big piece in trade relations and has a lot of power. And we're going to talk about that more tomorrow.